Yo, what's going on? What's happening? And this is a impromptu boxing conversation, that I wanted to bring up. Know that, we had a series of fights that happened over the past weekend. We did talk about it on the podcast that was on Sunday. Um, and I'm like bringing this up to kind of like continue a conversation that was basically started, um, before the weekend of events. You know, um, kind of like said, this to a certain extent on Friday. I think it was like Thursday or Friday. I said that people kind of want to bring up um, these particular fights that they want to bring up, and seems like they don't want to have these matchups within the super middleweight and middleweight divisions in particular that I'm talking about. There are two guys that are part of the conversation when it comes to these guys being put in separate uh, pedestal or bracket in comparison to all of the other fighters that are in or around those divisions. One of them, of course, is Canelo Alvarez, who did score his win over Callum Smith to become the WBA, WBC, and Ring Magazine Super Middleweight Champion. And the other is Gennady Golovkin, who is currently the IBF middleweight champion and had his defense last Friday against Camille Cesaro. And, we had a thing here where they talk about Canelo Alvarez and potential opponents for Canelo Alvarez. And they also talk about Gennady Golovkin and potential opponents for Gennady Golovkin, right? Now, there are various fighters that have been mentioned out there, but two particular fighters that when they're brought up, they get dismissed fairly quickly by a good amount of either fans or even some analysts. And this happens fairly often every time Canelo and Golovkin fight, right? And these two fighters are Jamal Charlo and Demetrius Andrade. Okay. You have Demetrius Andrade as the WBO middleweight champion. You have Jamal Charlo as the WBC middleweight champion. Okay. Now, if y'all have followed things here with the middleweight division, everything was basically held up a few years ago, right? When you had Canelo facing Golovkin, and most of the middleweight titles were on the line. So that first fight was in 2017, of course, and you had that draw in 2017. Now, during that time or around that time, you had Jamal Charlo moving up from super welterweight to middleweight. He was the IBF super welterweight champion. He moved up to middleweight. He faced George Sebastian Heelan, got a stoppage TKO victory, and became the WBC mandatory. Right. So from 2017 over to 2018, he was the WBC mandatory challenger. Now, you had the rematch, Canelo Golovkin. Canelo wins by decision to become the new unified champion at middleweight. So there's Jamal Charlo waiting for his mandatory title shot. Did he get it? No, he didn't. We know that Canelo was elevated to WBC franchise champion at middleweight. Okay. Now, in the process, Canelo ended up losing the IBF middleweight title because after he had faced and beat Daniel Jacobs, he was due, interesting, he was due a mandatory challenge spot by Sergey Derevyanchenko. So it's crazy because in the process of Canelo Alvarez being put in line to face Sergey Kovalev, which, of course, if people were in the know, kind of like seeing what was happening at that particular time, they knew that he was going to end up fighting Sergey Kovalev. But for that situation, for him to have the IBF title stripped, but not the WBC title stripped, was, very interesting indeed. Now, going through it real quickly, of course, the situation with the IBF middleweight title. It became vacant. Gennady Golovkin, Sergey Derevyanchenko fought for it. We know who got the decision there. Jamal Charlo gets elevated to WBC middleweight champion. Okay. You saw that Canelo Alvarez fought and beat Sergey Kovalev. But then you had this whole thing where, okay, he, had that fight beforehand, before he fought Daniel Jacobs, that is, right? Where he had fought Rocky Fielding at super middleweight. So he had that fight at super middleweight before going back to middleweight and then going to light heavy. Now, when I was talking about this whole thing with Jamal Charlo's there sitting first as a WBC mandatory, then as the WBC middleweight champion. And he doesn't get a fight with Canelo Alvarez. So next you have this other thing here where he could be unifying and could unify against Gennady Golovkin. But Gennady Golovkin doesn't unify with Jamal Charlo. He has a fight, and he goes up against, who is it? Steve Rose before his fight against Sergey Derevyanchenko. And then he has a fight against Camille Cesare-Meta, which was posed as the IBF mandatory. And that happened this past Friday, right? So it's funny because you have these times when, like I said, Jamal Charlo or Demetrius Andrade are brought up as potential opponents for Gennady Golovkin or Canelo Alvarez. And there are fans and some pundits alike that say, oh, these guys didn't really deserve a fight against a Gennady Golovkin or against a Canelo Alvarez. But at the same time, they won't mention what in the world did Steve Rose do to have those fights? What did Rocky Fielding do in order to get those fights with a Canelo Alvarez or a Gennady Golovkin? And the whole thing with Camille Cesare-Meta, I had the video about that too. I was like, okay, at that time, what did Camille Cesare-Meta do in order to become an IBF mandatory challenger to Gennady Golovkin? But yet, Gennady Golovkin still didn't have a unification bout against Demetrius Andrade or Jamal Charlo. That was strange to me. He could have unification bouts against a David Lemieux, but he wouldn't have a unification bout against Demetrius Andrade. Just like in the past, he didn't have a unification bout with Billy Joe Saunders or Andy Lee. But on the flip side, these guys, Demetrius Andrade or Jamal Charlo, have to, say, oh, they got to fight these guys. They got to fight this. They got to fight that, in order to earn a shot, quote unquote, with Canelo Alvarez or Gennady Golovkin. Shout out to Lawrence Williams here on the chat, man. I'm just chopping it up as far as like bringing up this topic of conversation that it seems like a lot of people have an issue when the names Jamal Charlo and Demetrius Andrade are brought up as potential opponents for Gennady Golovkin or Canelo Alvarez. But other fighters that are out there as potential opponents, they don't really say much about that. And it seems like there's like a real problem with that because there's been a pattern over the past couple of years that says, oh, who have these guys fought in order to get a shot against the Gennady Golovkin? Or, oh, what have these guys done in order to get a shot with Canelo Alvarez? And it was recently brought up that, they want to say, why is it that Jamal Charlo should be able to get a fight with Canelo Alvarez? Well, shoot, he should have had one when he was at middleweight. So when you have this thing about a recent topic about Jamal Charlo saying that, I want to move up to 168 to potentially fight Canelo Alvarez. And I'm like, well, that would be the same thing that he did when he attempted to move up to 160 in order to line up that particular fight. And that didn't end up happening. So he's going to try it again at 168. Now, it could have been a potential matchup between Jamal Charlo and former WBC champion David Benavidez, but David Benavidez in his last fight missed weight, where he could have won, or he could have held on to the WBC super middleweight championship. So now with Charlo considering moving up in weight, he could end up fighting for the WBC super middleweight title if Canelo decides to vacate after winning it against, Callum Smith when, it was basically vacant anyway, right? So you could have Jamal Charlo going up against Avni Yildirim for the WBC super middleweight title, and yet you still have Canelo Alvarez out there as the Ring Magazine super middleweight champion and the WBA super champion at super middleweight. So my thing is, why not have that fight coming up in 2021? Especially since you've had a fight over in San Antonio. We've had fights over in the Dallas area, AT&T Stadium and things like that. So they can have a fight in Houston where you have somebody in Charlo from the Houston area. You have Canelo Alvarez that has had fights in multiple venues in the state of Texas, including Houston. That would be a very, very good fight that would happen between those two fighters. Then on the flip side, you could have a unification between Gennady Golovkin and Demetrius Andrade. It's crazy. You have Demetrius Andrade, you have Gennady Golovkin. They're there in the middleweight division, and hey, they're also fighting on the zone. But yet you can't make a unification fight between those two. And yet you have a lot of people, trying to sideswipe Andrade and say that Gennady Golovkin should be fighting Canelo. Let's see, Ronald Finkley up in here. Canelo, the big double head ducker. Ronald, who do you think that Canelo is sidestepping the most in this case? Do you think it's someone like a Demetrius Andrade? Do you think it's Jamal Charlo? Or do you think that he is stepping aside in reference to someone else? Now, Canelo says that he doesn't mind fighting anybody, will step up to fight anybody. and a lot of people will say your resume kind of like shows it, but I mean, we got to see like how that is, put to the test and whatnot. Um, I wanted to see if I could try to, pull up the comments from, Demetrius Andrade in reaction to, you know, um, what he was talking about as far as like the thing there with Canelo, having his win and things like that, and how they kind of like compare his, CB, so to speak, in reference to other fighters that are out there. So I'm gonna see if I can run these comments from Demetrius Andre. So I'm gonna see if I could pull that up here real quick, and we got this thing going. So let me see if I can run it here. So there you go, right? There you go. And shout out to Ron Finkley here again. It's Demetrius Andrade that there, even though you favor the title fight, Andrade is right there being discriminated against by the network that they are both on. Yep, there you go. Like I said, man, you have Demetrius Andrade there on the zone, being there as the WBO middleweight champion. First of all, he was supposed to have that fight against Billy Joe Saunders, and we all know what happened with Billy Joe Saunders. So, you know what I mean? That's kind of like what would have been his kind of like, notable fight. And they still didn't get that fight situated or made. They ended up having Billy Joe Saunders move up to super middleweight, and he became the WBO champion at super middleweight. And look, and what happened before this whole thing with the lockdown and whatnot, Canelo Alvarez would have been fighting Billy Joe Saunders. So you would have had, either this fight here with Canelo and Callum Smith, or would have been Canelo Alvarez against Billy Joe Saunders. But yet, when a potential matchup comes up, like a Demetrius Andrade, who is on the zone, yes, they're like, oh, no, 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 no. He shouldn't have that. He doesn't deserve that fight. What has he done? But as he was, explaining there, it's not like, everybody that Canelo Alvarez fought was killers. Like he was fighting guys like he was naming, Miguel Cotto that was past it, Shane Mosley that was past it, Josecito Lopez, Alfredo Angulo, James Kirkland. Amir Khan was, there at, 155 pounds. You know what I mean? So that was the thing. Shout out to Joe coming out here. He says that Billy Joe Saunders said in an interview with Sky Sports he's willing to fight an eliminator with Andrade for the Canelo fight. Now, I've seen Billy Joe Saunders and Andrade, I guess talking with each other, and maybe they were trying to see if they could set up a fight with each other. So, hey, maybe they could try to get that thing going, sooner rather than later. But we did see Billy Joe Saunders have an immediate reaction after the fight, that that he would want to be that guy to step up against Canelo Alvarez there. You said, like, meanwhile, the brothers, at 154, you talking about those that are, fighting at 154 pounds now that could be moving up, or you're talking about Jermell Charlo there, that is the unified super welterweight champion. But yeah, like I was saying there, you had an instance where Billy Joe Saunders and Demetrius Andrade were kind of like talking with each other, like they were trying to see if they could still set up a fight against each other. But like I said, Billy Joe Saunders has been like, yo, I could have been fighting Canelo Alvarez this year, May of this year, and that was basically taken away from me. So he may feel like he's owed that fight, but Like I said, with Demetrius Andrade is, did what he was trying to do, got himself there. He was at 154 and he moved up and he became a middleweight champion. You know, uh, that's what I'm saying. Uh, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, like I said, man, you had the James Kirklands in there. You had the thing there with Alfredo Angulo, Shane Mosley. What was it? Alfonso Gomez. And that thing with Austin Trout, where Austin Trout, is my guy. He's been one of the frequent guests on the podcast. Like I said, he had that open scoring. You know what I mean? So that's the thing there. Says like after the Canelo fight, he said he wants to end the Canelo hype. Yeah, yeah, that's the thing there with Billy Joe Saunders, man. I think if I could pull that up. I know that he did have a quick comment after that fight, you know, uh, and let me see, and he pretty much like retweeted something from Sky Sports yesterday talking about in the question of if Billy Joe Saunders is the man to tame Canelo. It's like, Canelo is well done. Now 2021 unification. Let's get it on. And then he, tagged Eddie Hearn and he tagged MTK Global, which is MTK Global might be in a little bit of a situation right now. That will be held off, for another video or something like that. But shout out to one of my guys, YSM Sports Media, that was talking to me about that situation that MT Global currently has right now. But like I was saying there, you got Billy Joe Saunders that says he wants that Canelo fight. Like I said, and what was it, like May 2nd of this year was supposed to be that fight between Canelo Alvarez and Billy Joe Saunders. But like I said, with the shutdown that happened pretty much around March 12th of this year, we didn't have any live sporting events or any live boxing until July. So that's how we basically ended up with Canelo Alvarez versus Callum Smith. And now we see what's going on for 2021. But Demetrius Andrade, yeah, he should be in that conversation. Jamal Charlo definitely should be in that conversation. Jamal Charlo was able to defeat Sergey Derevyanchenko in September of this year. Pretty much more clear than, notable guys that have stepped in the ring against Canelo Alvarez, as in Daniel Jacobs, when Daniel Jacobs won at the time the vacant IBF middleweight championship. And then when it was vacant once again, you had Sergey Derevyanchenko against Gennady Golovkin, and we saw what happened there in that particular fight. Even though Derevyanchenko was knocked down in the first round, he was putting in that work to Gennady Golovkin, and the decision just didn't go his way in that. But Jamal Charlo was able to clearly defeat Sergey Derevyanchenko over the course of 12 rounds there. So, I feel like he should be there, definitely in the conversation to fight Canelo Alvarez in 2021. But we have this issue about, some fans and some pundits that say, oh, what have these guys done in order to earn a fight, against a Canelo Alvarez? But they want to, turn around and say that, oh, we should just have this third fight between Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin. And I've said it before and I say it now. I'm probably more irritated that people bring up that potential fight more than Canelo Alvarez is. And Canelo Alvarez is the one that would get paid about $30 to $40 million for that fight. When he still don't want he really don't want any parts of Gennady Golovkin, and I don't blame him. Now, the thing here with Jamal Charlo, right? He's like I said, he's faced Sergey Derevanchenko. He's had his fight with Matt Korobov. He's had his fight with Brandon Adams. There at the middleweight division. He's kind of like been there, like sitting around, waiting for that particular fight. At the middleweight division, and yet no one has really given him that opportunity. They want to see about like they were trying to match up those two guys, the Jamal Charlo and the Demetrius Andrade, given their history, that it was slim chances that that fight was going to actually happen between those two guys. If it does, it's not even. It's a real difficult thing to put together, given that Demetrius Andrade and Jamel Charlo could have fought at 154 pounds, but that fight was nixed. So that still leaves a sour taste in the mouths of the Charlo brothers. So that carries on and lingers on there, man. But at least one of these guys got to get this certain shot with either Canelo Alvarez or Gennady Golovkin, man. Um, yeah, sick, man. And while makes boxing, it's what makes boxing dishonest, and I ain't going on any channels that condone blatant ducking. Boxing is about legendary status, not playing corporate greed. Well, thing about it is, man, boxing is a business, and that's what it looks like out here sometimes. Boxing is a business, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like I was mentioning with Canelo Alvarez, like Canelo Alvarez, says that he wants to fight anybody. And, immediately after this fight, you had like boxing writers talk about Canelo Alvarez being among the greats as far as like Mexican fighters and possibly, one of the greatest, modern fighters out there, given his resume. But if you're not going to, have him go up against these guys like a Charlo or an Android, then what else is it? A lot of people want to bring up his fight against Canelo's fight against Erislandy Lara, just like he had there with was it Chris Mannix or whatnot. Well, Demetrius Andrade would be another fighter that would be an awkward guy for Canelo to fight. Someone that is more, I would say, efficient in offense and has very good defense that Canelo would have to adjust himself to, and seems like not a lot of people want to, I would necessarily say, see that fight because they say, oh, Andre really hasn't done nothing or hasn't done much. Like, I want to see that fight. I want to see what Canelo could do against someone like a Demetrius Andrade, and I want to see what Demetrius Andrade could do at this particular, level. You know what I mean? If Canelo Alvarez is supposed to be the, this number one pound for pound guy, and is fighting guys that are taller and have the range and everything like that, well, Demetrius Andrade will probably do a little bit better in using his range than Callum Smith did. And Callum Smith is 6'3" with a 78-inch reach. And yet he didn't really use that reach at any point in the fight on Saturday. It just didn't look like that to me. So, that was my thing on it. It was funny because I like looked around and I brought up Charlo as being the potential opponent for Canelo Alvarez in 2021, and someone like mentioned that, oh, well, maybe Charlo should fight a Golovkin or fight a Daniel Jacobs before he should fight Canelo Alvarez. And I'm like, wait a minute. First of all, Gennady Golovkin didn't want to fight Jamal Charlo when Jamal Charlo moved up and became the WBC mandatory. And he could have had that shot to fight for that WBC mandatory, just like he did beforehand when he had two belts and then fought for the WBC mandatory position. Gennady Golovkin actually did that while holding two world titles. He fought Marco Antonio Rubio in 2014 for the interim WBC middleweight title. He had no issues with that. But when Jamal Charlo moved up and beat George Sebastian Heelan to become the WBC mandatory, now it's a problem for Gennady Golovkin to do that. Like Canelo is just still in time. Well, I guess he said his plans are trying to see if he can still be in the game for another 5 to 7 years. He's already been in for 15 years as a professional. And that initial deal, I think, was 11 years. So he's got like another 9 years or so actually on that contract. So it started at 2018, and he had that, I know it's not 11 years. 11 fight, $365 million deal. So I guess I don't know if he's still within that particular deal. It doesn't look like it, after the whole thing about getting the settlement with Tizone and Golden Boy. So that makes him a free agent. So he doesn't really have that 11 fight deal anymore. He's kind of operating as a free agent. So, now it's like he can move around however he wants. Of course, he had other potential fights out there, like a Caleb Plant, the IBF super middleweight champion. But now that might be out of the card since Caleb Plant is now scheduled to fight January 30th against Caleb Truax. So a turnaround from January 30th to possibly May, I don't think would happen because he wasn't interested in being in the turnaround this year after he fought Vincent Feigenbutz to defend the IBF title. He was like, as far as like fighting Canelo, nah, I'm not, ready for that at this particular time. So, with Plant, that's out of the cards. David Benavidez, I don't see that happening, because Benavidez, still may have to see if he is still going to campaign at 168 pounds. Billy Joe Saunders is like the highest possibility at this point to me, but I just don't see him having much interest in fighting the Andrade or a Jamal Charlo. If he couldn't get beat for it, he definitely isn't trying to lose to a young, unfazed guy about who he is. Demetrius Andrade and Jamal Charlo, I bet on both to beat him. That's the key thing. They're young and they're unfazed. They're not, they're not in awe of the name of Canelo Alvarez. They're like saying, hey, I'm a young guy. I'm a dog. I'm going to go in there, and I ain't going to go in there to just, make my opponent look good. I'm going in there to win. And that was one of the other points that Demetrius Andrade said during the fight between Canelo Alvarez and Callum Smith, is that Callum Smith didn't look like he was in there fighting to win. He was in there fighting to survive. And you definitely see a difference in fighters that fight to win and that fight to survive. Like in the Sunday's podcast, like someone said, shoot, Liam Smith looked like he was fighting more to win than fighting to survive in comparison to his brother Callum Smith. And that's crazy because Liam Smith was there at 154 pounds and he ended up getting knocked out, but it looked like he was really trying to win that fight. But here we are at 168, and Callum Smith, who's supposed to be the Ring Magazine super middleweight champion, the guy that's supposed to be rated number one at super middleweight, and he's not doing what it takes in order to try to make it much of a fight against Canelo Alvarez. And Demetrius Andre pointed that out. And it's crazy because I mean, you would have thought that um, you would have thought that Callum Smith would be able to put up some type of a fight if he's supposed to be posed as the number one super middleweight. And he didn't really do that. So that's kind of like that's kind of like a bad situation there with Callum Smith not being able to, do much at all in order to, give people some type of, intrigue into this fight, you know. But yeah, that's my thing about it is Callum Smith just looked like he was in there, got in, got a payday. I'm good. I'm set. I'm gonna try to get through this fight. Then I'm gonna move up, to light heavyweight and see what I could do at light heavyweight. You know what I mean? And yeah, yep, yeah. Callum Smith, man, yeah, tore his bicep, man, because he was getting hit with them punches from Canelo Alvarez. And the thing is, like I was saying, he wasn't fighting tall. He was, fighting just to try to get to the inside and was working the inside. But he didn't throw while he was on the inside because he was getting hit hard. And once he got hit hard, that's when he kind of, shriveled up and, had his guard up and, tried to block the punches that were Canelo was throwing and then he got hit, with those hooks. And because he got hit with those hooks on his arm started to hurt, and then he didn't really want to throw with much emphasis with his power shots. And that's why he only had like a 16% connect percentage from Callum Smith in this fight. He didn't really set up anything against Canelo Alvarez. Like, with the confidence of a Demetrius Andrade or a Jamal Charlo, they're not going to, just show up and just say, oh, hey, I made it in the ring. Now that I got paid, I made it in the ring. No, I'm going in there. I'm going in to fight you. I'm going in there to beat you. And I'm going in there to show that I'm the better man. And that's the thing there with a Demetrius Andrade or Jamal Charlo is that they're not going to go in there just to, be there and make their opponent look good, like I was saying before. But for some reason, there's an issue when those two names are brought up as potential opponents for Canelo Alvarez, or even potential opponents for Gennady Golovkin, like I was saying, because not only were a lot of people, raving about, what Canelo was doing, but they were raving about what Gennady Golovkin did on Friday against Camille Cesaro-Meta. And this is a Camille Cesaro-Meta that was part of the undercard to Golovkin versus Derevyanchenko. And I really had to look to find how, Camille Cesaro-Meta became the mandatory contender, you know. I guess it said it was against Oscar Cortez. Well, it wasn't against Oscar Cortez. Certainly wasn't against him. I guess it was against Ruben Diaz back in 2018 when he beat Ruben Diaz. Maybe that was it. I mean, I really couldn't, tell y'all for sure. I'm not sure where these fighters are coming from, but they're usually there when it comes to some fighters there. And it's crazy because a lot of people want to complain about Jamal Charlo possibly fighting Canelo Alvarez, but I talk about Rocky Fielding, like Demetrius Andre said, Rocky Fielding, like this is Rocky Fielding that got knocked out in the first round by Callum Smith years ago, you know. And like you were saying, man, Fielding there, you basically, got the WBA. It was a WBA regular super middleweight title that he came in there with against Tyron Zeuge, and that was against someone that was in Germany that pretty much had a majority of, well, basically all of his fights in Germany. So like, when in the world did he even win this thing? Oh, he won it against Giovanni de Corollis in 2016, and I'm sure that many of y'all are not familiar with who that Giovanni guy is. Anyway, so but yet Rocky Fielding was able to get a fight with Canelo Alvarez, and yet people want to talk about resumes of Jamal Charlo, but they don't talk about resumes of a Rocky Fielding there. Even to a certain extent, you could probably bring up the resume of Callum Smith and say, because outside of George Groves, who's really going to bring up a Nicky Olsen? You know, who's going to bring up, like I said, who's going to bring up a Rocky Fielding in this case? Who is going to, bring up a Luke Blackledge, or maybe even an Eric Skoglund? You know, um, not very many. Now, Callum Smith did fight Hassan and Dom. Hassan and Dom was a middleweight that contended for a middleweight title and lost to David Lemieux at middleweight. Yet he hadn't came up to fight Callum Smith at super middleweight, but no one wants to, kind of like bring up the whole thing with Jamal Charlo, like I said, moving up in order to try to get a fight with Canelo Alvarez, and still ended up fighting guys like Matt Korobov, like Brandon Adams, like Dennis Hogan, um, who are guys that really compete there in the middleweight division, but yet they're not put up to fight the likes of Canelo Alvarez or Gennady Golovkin. But guys like Rocky Fielding and guys like Camille Cesare and guys like Steve Rolls are readily available to fight Golovkin or Canelo, and there's no complaints about it whatsoever. None whatsoever. It's crazy because someone actually brought up Rocky Fielding as some type of a risk for Canelo Alvarez when Rocky Fielding was a bigger underdog to Canelo Alvarez at super middleweight than Daniel Jacobs was at middleweight. Run that back. Rocky Fielding was a bigger underdog to Canelo Alvarez at super middleweight than Daniel Jacobs was as an underdog to Canelo Alvarez at middleweight, right? Uh, I guess we have what is it? A new series called As the Cherry Pick Turns. I guess. If you didn't believe that Canelo was still in time, I wouldn't call him an advanced cherry picker, but he is. Well, I guess you're kind of like sharing the same sentiments of Demetrius Andrade. Like, you know, Demetrius Andrade, like, bring us up the point. I'm like, yeah, he's fun. The guys, the Erislandy Lars, the Austin Trouts, the, Floyd Mayweathers and that type of thing. But these other guys that are, notable, like, at what point did Canelo Alvarez fight these guys? When did he fight, with Shane Mosley? When did he fight Miguel Cotto? Um, when did he fight these like Matthew Haddons or whatever it is? That also has to be taken into account. That's what Demetrius Andrade is bringing up. So that's why he feels like he should go ahead and be one of those guys that should be an opponent for Canelo Alvarez next year. And Jamal Charlo put in his hat as a potential opponent for Canelo Alvarez. Both of those guys are at middleweight. Hey, actually, right now, currently, yeah, Canelo Alvarez still holds a world title in the middleweight division. He is the WBA champion at middleweight. So if he can, he could just drop down to 160 pounds and have a unification bout against one of those guys and just say, hey, one of y'all wanted to fight me? Hey, I'll come down. If need be, I'll come down to 160 and fight y'all, you know? But even when that's even mentioned, you have a lot of people trying to push back on that. Um, yeah, there were a couple of instances where Canelo did use catch weights. Um, so that would be another thing that could be brought up as a critique of Canelo Alvarez is that he has used catch weights against some of his opponents. So you do have that. Um, but you also have the thing there with Gennady Golovkin where, like I said, he is not really facing the guys like a Jamal Charlo or a Demetrius Andre, but like in the past, I'm not even talking about the whole thing with Steve Rolls. I'm not even talking about his fight on Friday with Camilo Jaramillo. He fought Kell Brook at middleweight. He fought Kell Brook at middleweight, and yet no one wants to, criticize him for that. But when Demetrius Andre would want to fight him or Jamal Charlo wants to fight him, people want to get on their case. That's crazy. Want to get in one of the guys that's been out in the streets working hard, putting in work there in boxing and sports in general, joining us here in this conversation live. YSM Sports Media is in the building right now. What's going on?
What's good, JR?
Chilling, man. Just been on this conversation about like how hypocritical some people can be in the sport of boxing.
I mean, I feel like when anything is as subjective as boxing is going to come with a certain level of hypocrisy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What's the initial topic though? Because I literally just came in. Is it Canelo?
Well, it's Canelo and it's Gennady Golovkin because
Oh gosh.
yeah, I know. But the thing is with Canelo, like I was bringing up the point with Demetrius Andre, that was at the venue there, the Alamo Dome in San Antonio for that Canelo fight, and while these commentators are trying to, they're praising Canelo for doing this and doing that, and he's like, yeah, okay, he's done a few things, but we out here and we want to have that shot against Canelo. And yet y'all are being one of the main culprits and pushing us back from having that fight, you know? And and of course, about the whole redundant thing about when, Demetrius Andrade or Jamal Charlo gets brought up, people have that line, oh, who did they fight? Why should they be able to fight Canelo? They ain't fight nobody. Like, come on though, man.
See, Andre should have known after the first go round with Matchroom at the Zone that Eddie couldn't deliver on that fight. And he should have just went ahead with the PBC route when he had the guaranteed fight with Charlo. And I think what is it? It was a 3 or 4 fight deal with Showtime that I felt like he should have just went ahead with, but he didn't. And now I ain't gonna say he's reaping what he sowed, but sometimes you just make consistently bad decisions in business. And I feel like Andre is that Canelo only is going to take a high risk fight if it's if it's financially lucrative. and a fight with Demetrius Andrade isn't financially lucrative. So it's going to make you roughly what you fought against, you made against Callum Smith, and it's a much harder fight. So it don't seem like dudes are willing to do that. Is if it's going to be a tough fight, it got to bring a tough check.
Right. Yeah, and
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 Triple G and Triple G just don't want to fight anybody because at least you can say with Canelo, he's going to take a tough fight if it pays. Triple G, man, I don't know. Like I don't know. If it's not Canelo, he's not trying to take no fights.
yeah, no big drama show, no big drama show. Andre not good boy. Charlo, he not good boy. Um,
Let's
what's
be
his?
honest. He didn't want to fight Jacobs.
Nope, he
He didn't
didn't.
want that fight. He didn't really want the Deverenchenko fight. He wanted the Canelo rematch.
Yep.
He didn't want Andre Ward. He didn't want Charlo. He didn't want Andre. Like, bro, it's a whole bunch of.
And to
He
an
didn't want.
extent, he didn't want Billy Joe Saunders.
Oh yeah, no, he didn't want Billy because he passed up on that fight. He was supposed to fight Andy Lee. His dad died, and he never revisited that fight after he pulled out. I mean, bro, but Marcos Antonio Rubio, yeah, he'll do those.
Yeah,
Dominic
no
James, he'll
problem.
do those. And
Yeah,
you
Steve
can't say
Rose,
it's
no
Abel
problem.
Sanchez because it's not Abel Sanchez no more. It's you.
Yep. Like you drop Abel Sanchez, you pick up Jonathan Banks, and you kind of like work a little bit more independent. And you know, what's his name? Tom Loeffler is not really involved much anymore. You're there with Eddie Hearn now. But has anything changed? Nope, nothing has changed. So, and the thing is, like with the Derevianchenko fight, when that fight finally happened, and then he got the decision, it didn't take but days for him to kind of like go forward with the IBF mandatory. Whether
Mm.
the rules are there as far as like fighting the mandatory immediately or not, it just is interesting that you want to go ahead and choose to fight those guys like Camille Cesare or Dominic Wade or something like that. But when it's like something that could pose an actual challenge, he has a problem with it. You know,
Um, yeah, and Zarameta, like people were like, oh, he's the Mando, but yeah, he requested that the Mando be ordered. Like, come on, guys, and no history of anybody of any big major fighter that was making money ever requested for a mandatory. Like nobody's ever done that, bro.
yeah,
If anything, everybody tries to avoid their mandatories for bigger, more lucrative fights. Like this isn't an opinion, this isn't conjecture, this is a fact. Like I can name about 7 to 8 situations where shit, Anthony Joshua right now don't want to fight his mandatory. Deontay Wilder tried to avoid his mandatory so he could get in Tyson Fury and a possible fight with Joshua. Floyd never fought a mandatory in the history of his life.
ever, like ever.
Yeah,
You know,
so it's not like this. This is like it's customary that the big cash cow doesn't want to fight his man though.
yeah.
And
And the crazy thing is that this is the IBF that's usually the most stringent as far as like having their champions fight their mandatories. But Gennady Golovkin just took that took that away from it and said, "Hey, don't even worry about that. I'll do it. I'll do it. Hey, mandatory, yeah, let's do that. You know,
yeah,
this is mad crazy there, man. Um, but when it comes to like somebody like a like say Demetrius Andrade, if he fights a WBO mandatory, uh, Like if he ends up like fighting one of those guys, then how will people be viewing Demetrius Andrade if he does that? Like look, like you were saying, even though Demetrius Andrade kind of like chose his path or whatnot. Look at the guys that he was fighting, over the past couple of years, with the exception of what I'd say, um, the thing with Masi Selecki, then all these other fights that he's had at middleweight haven't really been, notable at all. So unless he fights like maybe he fights Jaime Munguia as a mandatory, then maybe that could be some type of a notable fight. But outside of that, then what?
I don't think Jaime Munguia is good at boxing.
Yeah, that's the thing though.
So I don't really think he's good. And I don't know. It still would be a better name than anybody he's been fighting. Because Deferenchenko, remember the IBF ordered that, right? That was for the
Yeah.
vacant. That was for the vacant. So
Yep.
it's not like he chose Deferenchenko. If like that was kind of thrusted upon him.
Yeah.
So I just think he wants either soft touches or Canelo.
That's basically what it is. He wants to be the guy that is the winner of the Canelo sweepstakes, and it was kind of like talked about a couple of weeks ago that like it seems like everybody that's in 160 or 168 wants to campaign for the Canelo sweepstakes. And there was one other point here that I mean, in the podcast that's brought up here by Ron, it's like Eddie got everybody that was decent over there, but haven't made any legendary status fight since Clarissa Shields
Yeah,
and Gabriel. But
Ronald, you're right.
on the
Ronald,
yeah,
you're right.
but on that point, it's like Eddie got all of these guys there at Matchroom in 160 and 168, and it seems like he's like trying to promise these guys that they could put them in position to fight Canelo Alvarez. And only after all this time, only what, two fighters had basically got that shot?
Mm.
Daniel Jacobs and Callum Smith. And that's it.
Yeah. Let me ask you this though, right? PBC gets a lot of criticism, but let's look at Keith Thurman, right? Keith Thurman has fought Sean Porter, Manny Pacquiao, and Danny Garcia, right? Earl Spence has fought Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Mikey Garcia, right?
Yep.
Sean Porter has fought Danny Garcia, Earl, and Keith.
Yep.
So they often get criticism for not making the best fights. But their welterweight division, their star-studded division. Oh, Manny Pacquiao, since getting there, has fought Adrian Broner and Keith Thurman, and he's only been there for 2 fights. So,
right.
Al always gets shit for his fighters not fighting, but his star-studded division, they fought each other. The only people that haven't fought is Manny, Keith, Manny, and Sean. And remember, Manny hasn't been there that long. Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Keith and Earl. Keith and Earl for the beats has been. Keith and Earl haven't fought yet.
Right.
But if that's the only people that necessarily haven't fought, that's pretty good compared to Callum Smith didn't fight Billy. Callum Smith hasn't fought Danny. Billy hasn't fought Danny. Billy hasn't fought Callum. Billy hasn't fought Canelo. Billy hasn't fought Andrade. Andrade hasn't fought any of them.
Right. But, and look at 154 for PBC too.
154, bro, is like, man, that shit is like the war on Cybertron.
That's been the Russian roulette battle royale over the top rope type. You know what I mean? Like everybody has basically fought each other at 154 pounds under PBC. But yet with Matchroom, like you have these fights that are right there laying on your lap at 160, 168 pounds, and you're not doing any one of those things. You know,
Mm,
it's crazy. Yeah, like you said, they run us crazy. You know, and yet there isn't much criticism going the way of Eddie Hearn in reference to not making those fights. And it's like I said, it's been you know about like 2 years or so, and it hasn't been done. And the thing with Callum Smith is like this was almost like a makeup fight for Callum Smith
mm,
because after getting the win over George Groves, he really wasn't put in a position to have those notable fights.
mhm,
After that, and even with the World Boxing Super Series, like the guys that he fought en route to it, like I think those guys were like replacement. Like Nicky Holson was a replacement fighter in that
mm.
tournament. So like Callum Smith didn't get the opportunity to fight more of the notable guys there at super middleweight en route to the final against George Groves. So he still had to build up a resume of his own there at 168 before even getting this thing here with Canelo. But outside of that, yeah, you don't have those fights at 160 pounds or 168 pounds that could be there within the top 4 or 5 guys in those divisions.
The thing, bro, you're 100% correct, right? The thing is that why are these guys re-signing with Eddie? And I like Eddie. I think Eddie, Eddie tries, but Eddie hasn't really delivered for anybody but Danny Jacobs.
I'm
Like,
thinking,
think about that.
yeah,
Danny Jacobs, Eddie's delivered for Danny Jacobs. Well, I'm sorry, Al and Eddie's delivered for Danny Jacobs because Danny Jacobs got Triple G and Canelo.
Canelo.
Oh,
Yep,
and Chavez.
yep.
So you really can't ask for much more than that in that particular division. That's going to bring you money because those 3 fights bring you money.
Mm-hmm.
But
And he basically did that by beating Derevianchenko.
yeah, so
Yeah,
Eddie's so Eddie really hasn't delivered for Dev, hasn't really delivered for Andre,
right.
didn't really deliver for Tevin. Didn't really yeah, bro. Oh shit.
Well, Tevin was basically in the same situation as Demetrius Andre, because I mean, if you got Demetrius Andre passing on a fight with Jamal Charlo, you had Tev, passing on a fight with Tank.
Yeah, shit. I'll talk to you about that off camera.
All
But
right.
I got more about that story.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. But and now look, Tevin's not even gonna get his rematch.
Nope. Nope.
Okay. And Dillian White hasn't never got a title shot.
Not have a world title shot yet. Nope.
So and I want people out there to know I actually like Eddie Hearn. Like I like him. He's a good guy. Like he always does interviews. And we're biased in that whoever has time with us, we become partial to. But
Right.
yeah, Andy Ruiz has had two title shots, right? Dominic Brazil has had 2 title shots. Joseph Parker has had 2 title shots. Okay.
Yeah.
Johan Duhapis has had 2 title shots. Um, and what is the dude's name? The other guy that Wilder fought, Eric Molina has had two
Lena,
title
yep.
shots.
He's had 2 title shots. Yep.
Luis Ortiz has had 2 title shots. Alexander Povetkin has had 2 title shots. Um, Bermain Stavern has had 2 title shots. Dillian White has had none. Like
Zebra.
I didn't really want to be long winded, but that's a lot of guys.
Yes, yep, it is. It is. Kubrat Pulev had his title shot,
Who's that? Pulev has had 2 title shots. Charles Martin has had 1 title shot.
Yep.
Anthony Joshua has had 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm sorry, 4. Because the IBF, then the WBO, then the WBA, and
Mm-hmm.
then he lost the belts and then got them all
He
back.
got
So
back. Yep.
yeah, he's had 4 title shots. Yeah, that's
But
not good.
yeah, Dylan White, yeah, not being able to get in that position, that for me, that's on him because, like we are saying, like he could have had that shot against Anthony Joshua, but he said no. And the thing was, it was like Eddie Hearn, but at that particular instance, Eddie Hearn told him, he was like, "Yo, here's the thing," because he clearly told him, he said, "Look, you, right now you're at this particular point, you haven't had a title shot yet.
Mm.
Yeah, you're put in a position to be the mandatory for WBC and WBO or whatever it is. So, but the thing with the WBO was he was the number one contender. He
Mm.
wasn't the mandatory. So Eddie Hearn said, "Hey, listen, I have this feeling that because Alexander Usyk is moving up, that he's gonna be viewed as the mandatory for the WBO. So if you want to have that shot at a world title, and Anthony Joshua says, "Hey, we could just have this fight," you better take it because there's no guarantee that the WBO is going to name you mandatory. And Dylan White said, I'm good. I'm gonna hold on to my cards and I'm gonna trust the WBO. And he got burned. And then he wanted to be mad about it. So that's on Dylan White in that case. But yeah, he has not had a world title shot yet after all this time. You know, but
I don't think he's ever going to get one
I don't think so either.
because
Because
with the way everything is structured now, unless one of them wins and retires, or they vacate them belts and they scatter like the Infinity Zones, he's not
yeah,
going to get a title shot.
yeah, he's not gonna get one. He's not gonna get one. Um he's we try to even with this route with the WBC, like he still had to wait it out, and with him losing, that delays him for at least another 12 months if he wants to get that shot with the WBC. And he's not really gonna get like he's had his one opportunity that he could have had the shot against Anthony Joshua. Joshua's not gonna offer that shot again. He's not going to.
No.
So, like you said, that them titles are gonna have to be split up like the Infinity Stones for Dylan White to ever get that opportunity at a world title, man. But
Yeah. I don't mean to cut you off, but you know what's crazy? One of the reasons why I think that either Usyk is going to have to take that step aside money, or they're going to have to vacate because the WBO got sued with that Austin Trout shit,
right,
and it was successful. So I don't think they want to go through another one of those. I'm not sure what the amount was, but it had to be at least a couple million, right?
oh yeah, it was a good amount. Like it was more, it was more than a couple million
Yeah,
from
it
what I was
was.
looking at.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, so that was yeah, they really didn't want to get going to that little ordeal once again. So and that it kind of like took what about 2.5 3 years for that to kind of like be settled up. So you know He's still. I mean, that's still. Yeah, it's still going though. It's from went from state court to like federal court. So that's the thing, man. So now it's like going into like arbitration and stuff like that. But we'll see how that goes. I'll probably have to get an update from Austin Trout on that.
Yeah,
But yeah, that
I mean,
yeah,
I
WBO
know
don't want.
how. What would you ask for? Because I know exactly what I would ask for.
What from Usyk?
No, for if I'm Austin Trout, I want the money and you make me the mandatory at 147.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah,
would do that too. I would do that too. I mean, he won like a legal victory, but the thing is, there wasn't any settlement or any ruling as far as like how much he
yeah.
gets.
I
Yeah,
mean, but like say for instance, he was supposed to get 10, right?
right.
All right, you give me 8 in the title shot, and we're good.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm like this, man. I'm like I'd rather just get the entire
You
10.
want
I
your
don't
10?
even want to. Yeah, I want the entire 10 because if there's like any inkling that even if I get like a mandatory title shot and then I fight and win, I still have to end up paying y'all. Nah, fuck that. I ain't
Yeah.
doing that shit.
So now you want your 10 off the top? Yeah,
I want
nah.
all the money. I want all that money. You know.
Said, yeah, I'll take this, and yeah, I'll holler at y'all later.
Yeah, I'll holler at y'all later, man. Yeah, I'll see y'all when I see y'all. But thanks for your service. You know what I mean? But
Yeah,
yeah, Usyk, because Usyk was like, yo, y'all name me the mandatory contender. Bet. Y'all knew that the thing was due. I knew that the thing was due. But I said, you know what? I'll go ahead and hold off on that. I'll get a fight at heavyweight, one that I feel like I can win. And so Joshua could honor that IBF mandatory, but after he honors that mandatory, I'm next up, guaranteed. So he's like, there's no skipping, no,
but
jumping the line
ooh,
or anything like that, you
but
know?
the bad part about that is, do I believe that Joshua would if that was signed? Yes, I do. Do I believe if Tyson Fury wins that? No, he won't. Bro, you can't trust Tyson Fury to do anything that he says or is contractually obligated to do. You just can't.
I guess you gotta have less trust in him than Jake Roberts, but I mean, yeah. But here's the other thing too, right? Like if you're Usyk, you're pretty much stuck because you're like, okay, do I want to fight Joshua now and get the money that I could get fighting Joshua now, or hold off and wait and see if I could fight the undisputed champ and get money on fighting the undisputed champ?
You gotta hope Joshua wins though.
Yeah,
Because Fury would tell you to go, go kick rocks.
yeah.
Like,
Go kick
oh
out your big dusser. I don't need to
yeah,
fight you. I'm the undisputed
exactly.
king. You know?
Exactly.
Mm.
You'll be called, like you said, all kind of dossers, all kind of bums.
You're a bum. Like, I'm a traveling man and I'm a fighting man, but I'm not fighting you, Usyk. Like, come on, man.
And, and we know that even that'll be a tough fight for Fury. It won't be easy
Yeah,
because
well,
Usyk can move. Because Usyk can move and Usyk's a southpaw, so I think that the different looks will probably give Fury some trouble. But um, man, I just I'm waiting to hear on what's the ruling for the arbitration. Because to be honest with you, Fury looks like he's training for a fight.
Yeah, and I mean, it's leaning towards that it's going to be Wilder. Um,
I don't even know what the issue is though, Jay. Is that okay? You said you wanted to fight December 5th. You said you wanted to fight December 5th, and before December was out, and that was the only reason why you're not fighting Wilder. Well, okay, bro, you can't fight December 5th, so fight Wilder. Simple. Let's do it January, February, whenever. Then fight Joshua in the spring or the summer. What's
yeah,
the problem with that?
that was my thing. Is like if if y'all were gonna have this supposed agreement between you and Joshua for the summer, go ahead and just get your fights over with sooner rather than later, and not try to delay, this fight. You could have had this gone and out of the way, and then you have Joshua honor his mandatory defenses, even though
Yeah.
supposedly unifications from mandatories, but we're talking about the IBF and the WBO.
Mm.
And once that's done, then yeah, you could have your undisputed heavyweight championship fight. Just go ahead, have that fight with Wilder. Wait until Joshua fights Usyk, which could have been like they could have set that thing up and said, "Hey, we could have this thing by April, mid to
Yeah,
late April."
and that's what I wanted, and that's what I wanted to say to you, right? Early April, late March, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like look at it this way. How long is a full training camp? What, 8 to 10 weeks?
8 to 10.
Okay, so 8 to 10, and Joshua for what, December 12th, right?
Yep.
So you could tell you could say, okay, well, I'm gonna fight Usyk in March, late March, early April, and then have Wilder fight Fury in February, and that me and Fury got a date for August or early September.
And here's the other thing: they're not even playing this thing right business wise.
Mm,
If they scheduled those two fights as close to each other as possible, knowing the aura of an undisputed heavyweight title fight could be in the balance. More interest in those two fights would be happening once they do happen. you
mm,
know. So you would have had a whole lot of people, watching Fury and Wilder 3 going down, and then after that fight, if they were going to have it before Joshua Usyk, then they're going to be having their eyes on Joshua to see if he's going to defeat Alexander Usyk. And so those, two winners, if they win out, then boom, you have the undisputed heavyweight title fight coming up in the fall, and people are going to be salivating for that fight. But no, everybody, well, at least Fury's side and whatever's going on to that is they're kind of like, going by the motions. And like I said, I'm like, with Fury, even with him talking about, like, when he was talking about possibly fighting somebody December 5th, I'm like, why would you do that when you have a huge guarantee fighting Deontay Wilder when it's supposed to be a joint pay per view? You know,
um, yeah, bro. And what I don't understand is like Fox and ESPN had an agreement. Like Fox let them produce the first fight, only to produce the third. Well, I'm sorry, the let him produce the second fight, only to produce the
on that
third,
deal.
right?
Yeah.
And I don't understand how if he thinks that ESPN is just gonna give him 20 million to fight Agat Caballo, come on, man. In the daytime, bro, come on.
No, not gonna
Well,
happen.
isn't this the last fight of his deal?
It might be. What was it? 5 fights?
Was it a 5 fight deal or was it a 4 fight deal?
I thought it was. I thought it was 5.
No, I'm gonna check, but yeah, I think this might be the last of his deal. So That's just not gonna happen.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
gotta
Let's
just
see.
what is it?
It's
It's four.
five. It was five.
It's five. So what was the first fight? What? Tom Schwartz,
Yep,
Otto Wiley, then Wilder. Okay, so he got two more.
two more. Now here's the thing, right? Would ESPN have allowed Tyson Fury to fight someone like Ajit Cabello under that contract when they could have still that guarantee with Deontay Wilder
Mm.
and then the possible fight with Anthony Joshua?
Ain't no way in hell they gonna let that go down.
Exactly. Especially given,
They gave you the two. They gave you the two turkey fights in the beginning.
right?
So yeah, you're right. They gonna try to squeeze. Yeah, I got them trying to squeeze these last. Now you're gonna have to give me two big money joints.
Yep.
But
Because they want to get it back.
yeah. But Jay, thanks for having me, man. I'm about to go. I'm about to go to sleep. But I appreciate you. Love the platform, man. And everybody out there, please subscribe, man. Great content.
Yeah, thanks a lot to YSM Sports Media for coming in here. Y'all check him out here. He's on YouTube, putting in work all day, every day out here. So y'all catch him out on YouTube as well. And I'll also put in the close to this conversation. Big shout out for those that have chipped in the chat, live chat. We'll be right back at it. Here with the boxing conversations, I guess like once a week, but we also have the podcast on Sundays. So y'all be sure to check that out and hit the notification bell for any new content that comes on this particular channel. Until next time, folks, I'm out. Peace.